But then, as anyone can plainly see, he wasn't a monkey, right? Now, that sounds as if you really mean it, right?
But that's not what we said.
As individual rights leave us free to pursue our own good in our own way, so long as we do not aggress upon the person or property of others, it follows that each of us has the right to freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association and assembly, the right to property and bodily autonomy, and the right to work and retain the fruits of our labor.
Do the ends justify the means? In your opinion, do they?
I don't find it possible to say no.
What will you do if you're the king of an empire, and you rely on the slavery of your people to keep you rich and powerful?
But you see your people waking up and starting to show dissent.
Well, right now they're capable of staying on top of the current, and they have enough money to buy into anything they want to. So they're trying to keep control, and so they're just trying to ride it out.
The local pockets of resistance are really quite remote and fragmented. They pose no threat at all to your reign. Time will take care of them.
Everything in the culture is for sale. So the G30 brings together 32 of the most powerful people in the world. They are essentially the executive committee of the policy core of global capitalism. And they provide an international understanding of policies needed to protect global capitalism and continued growth.
And they say they'll be working to ensure the measure passes in the coming weeks.
The World Economic Forum orchestrated the pandemic.
Folks, it's too dangerous to meet anymore.
There really is a denial of reality by center-left media. We have entered non-reality, and we are a thermonuclear nation with responsibilities to the entire planet. You too have responsibilities to the planet. This is a thermonuclear situation.
Socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth.
We'll overthrow it by force and violence. We'll have our way if it means bloodshed and terror.
Because the news about communism is getting around. But it's only another word for slavery.
You know, with the philosophy, with the concept of the agency as such, you know, just on the design, you know, because by definition, by design, is a left-hand covered, secret, no debate, no, they can do anything they want, they are accountable, we don't know to whom. You know, even the highest authority in the country said he didn't know. So who is the boss? We don't know.
9 dudes and chicks like you and me who are assigned to be the last word. And we as Americans agree to abide by the Supreme Court's decisions, even when they're wrong. So if you tell me I don't get it and I haven't looked at Benford's law and all of this stuff and understand the Epstein conspiracy reached the court, okay, fine. Yes, structural oppression really does exist.
At the very time of the Cold War with communism, the United States taxpayer was totally financing the Soviet Union, which had been insolvent since 1917.
You know, yes, it is absolutely true.
It was eating its way into the homes of the American workmen. Its sharp tongues of revolutionary heat were licking the altars of the churches, leaping at the belfry of the school bell, crawling into the sacred corners of American homes, seeking to replace marriage vows with libertine laws, burning up the foundations of society. While they have caused irritating strikes, and while they've infected our social ideas with the disease of their own minds and their unclean morals, we can get rid of them.
And this is a factor, as I say, which every CIA trainee learns at the beginning. Well, the purpose of these covert action operations was to affect events in a given country.
There are so many irregularities to explain that Antifa is denied, not reported upon, that you're having the idea that you're bigots and chauvinists shoved down your throat.
Yes?
By order of the Prince of the World, all peoples shall report for the universal census.
We have to let him know who we are.
Now, isn't that odd?
We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage.
They always say it's a mirage, but for a mirage to happen, you have to have very specific atmospheric conditions. You know, it's not a mirage. It's simply that you're looking across a plain.
They were, as I demonstrated with the Italian election, they were from the very beginning going on, and they continued on until today. There's never been a pause in these kinds of operations. And under the Reagan administration, of course, they've been very strongly emphasized and given generous funding around the world.
On confidence in the economy at a time when we're already questioning the confidence we have in our political leaders, our media. I think that's something that concerns me.
It's very scary. I'm still trying to figure out what the difference between us is, that is precisely.
I don't know the Soviet Union or the worst Stalin period of the Nazi era, but I know the dark side of America, and it's pretty dark.
And then add to it, of course,
people who are weak and cannot help themselves.
You're going to learn an awful lot.
That, we would have a good audience among the conspiracy theorists.
And then add to it, of course, what he makes of history, he had to make of history. Determinism is precisely that view, that human actions certainly have effects.
Trump's here to save the day.
One of those moments in history in which there is the necessity for a new world order.
Now, could I prove that?
For the world order, they want to see everybody poor. Then they can control them. Is that it? They can control them, and also it's much more satisfying to have a castle and a yacht if you know that all the peasants down there will never have these things and compete with you, you see.
Equality.
So, the world
Socialism is the ideology reflecting the desire by people who want change, people who want to get rid of the evils and the injustices of the capitalist society and replace it with a new society, a society based on public ownership. And public ownership means that instead of the corporations and the banks and the wealth, all that which is created by the labor of human beings, working people, instead of that wealth being accrued and accumulated by a small percentage, it is used for society's needs. In the United States Constitution, people are given political rights. The homeless get the right to vote every 2 or 4 years, but they don't have the right to a home. The socialist program is everyone must have the right to employment or an income if they can't work. Everyone, as a guaranteed constitutional right, must have a place to live that's affordable. And health care should be free, and education should be free.
But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract. In short, we need a great reset.
Transnational elites hold a common ideology of being the engineers of global capitalism, a firm belief that their way of life and continuing global capital is best for all humankind.
But those who sit at the top of the pyramid, the financial behemoths running this oppressive and violent economic order, have largely operated in the shadows.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Cabal. Perfect example of what you're going to see as we start exposing what Joe Biden and global elites are planning to do.
To release that so that it goes to all human beings in the world. And this isn't just one country, we're talking global here.
One day they held a group think and decided to...
We developed these better communities in these places that have been fucked for decades. You don't want that? You don't want a better world for your children? You don't want a safer world? What do you want to do? Die with all this money in the bank? Like, it's crazy.
I hope this makes you nervous.
Check this out.
Just do the right fucking thing.
Revolt. That we realize, like, all this stuff, whether you're talking about the healthcare system, whether you're talking about police reform, whether you're talking about impoverished communities that are stricken with crime and drugs, it's not changing. Revolt. Like, something has to happen, and something has to happen in a big way to change it. And all these things need to be addressed, right? Revolt.
Your United States can only be saved by waiting it out.
Revolt.
That limits their options in manipulating you.
And all of their techniques and all of their goals come right out of the Black Hand.
You know, CIA is about deniability, you know. You deny.
All those details before he meets the chief of the Foreign Service.
Those aren't my words. Those are his words.
I don't know how he got down there. I don't know who convinced him, or what kind of pleasure, vacation, or money, or whatever they put in front of his face, because he didn't belong there. He didn't have much to do with anything there. It's also interesting.
You and I are having a different conversation. We're not doing that.
What? You're saying, I agree that we're going to have very well aware of the Great Reset, which is, I mean,
yes, we don't have the wisdom to take over from the market, Glenn. It's
a system, and everybody, it's my way or the highway, and there's no.
We're not doing that.
What?
The term is frequently used to smear people in groups, not necessarily for being one, but merely for associating with one. So what is this unacceptable ideology?
This point about metaphysics.
Implanted memories, deleted memories, restricted memories, fragmented memories, and dimmed memories.
Objectivism hasn't much to offer society today.
It's basically an issue of free will versus determinism.
It's a big lesson in life, you know. You have two sides also to reconcile. You have a very dark side.
They want a global governance.
So I know Americans who are working very hard. You know, I have read your books, the Church Committee, whatever, trying to oversight, control. But what happened to those people?
The highest level group possible to address important international problems.
Hey, news media. You have to ask the question, was Jeffrey Epstein attached to any intelligence service?
What would you do if you wanted to stay in power? You would sure hope that they forget about it. You would want to distract them, or even better, turn them against each other, so that they forget about their original cause.
Their primary goal is the promotion of products and pro-capitalist propaganda through their psychological control of human desires, emotions, beliefs, fears, and values. That's what media does to us. Corporate media does this by manipulating our feelings and our cognition of human beings worldwide and promoting entertainment viewing as a distraction to global inequality.
What they will never do is bring focus back to the message of truth and change that is trying to be born and heard through this social upheaval. They will tell us what opinion to have about events and other people.
Don't make a mistake.
That will never happen. Oh, wait, it did.
They will continue to create sides for us to choose from.
Those who support individual rights are not motivated by an insensitivity to the plight and suffering of others, but rather by the recognition that in granting each of us the freedom to pursue our own good, social cooperation, the division of labor, and a prosperous society emerge in a bottom-up manner, and thus the ability to help others also improves. For without the wealth-generating mechanism of freedom, all the good intentions in the world will not clothe, house, and feed the poor.
Bingo. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Carl Jung, who lived through the totalitarianism which swept across mid-20th century Europe, likewise observed, "The mass state has no intention of promoting mutual understanding and the relationship of man to man. It strives for atomization."
They will tell us what opinion to have about events and other people.
We're not doing that. You and I are having a different conversation.
What?
Each is the proper guardian of his own health.
If we instead unite as a people, stop complying with the current structures in place, and support one another, we can not only survive, we can thrive.
Don't be foolish. They're condemning themselves to death.
They will continue to create sides for us to choose from.
I don't think you're understanding me. Let me try it again.
What? I agree with you.
This is the way
and I don't, but that's not the discussion that is happening in the world at all. It should be. With the digital revolution on our heels, we have to have this conversation.
The mainstream media which we all know is in the business of maintaining the status quo, is doing a great job at doing just that. They are reducing this global transformation that's going on, this beautiful shift in human consciousness, into a petty war between each other.
We are in the Kafka world. Who is in the castle? We don't know, because the president said he didn't know. And the next guy says the buck stops here, but didn't say anything with that, because he just avoided it. So for me, it's extremely serious that the democracy needs a CIA.
And that's what they want. So, you can kind of piece it together as to why they are so insistent in spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars of propaganda money to dumb down society.
The NSA's Signals Intelligence is a program to remotely monitor magnetic fields created by electrical signals. And this applies to remote neural monitoring, aka thought surveillance. I am unsure what percentage of the population is under remote neural monitoring.
We are the ones who either give it power or let it collapse.
But you're not talking about the United States anymore. You're talking about a revolution to found a new country that doesn't exist.
Yes.
There's no shortage of reality that you have been denied.
The old system will no longer hold power over us because we're the boss.
The magic and genius of this country is the way in which what I've called the oral and written Torah of the United States, the Constitution and our culture interact. And so part of it is that even though this country came after my family,
we blame society, but we are society.
I stand when the national anthem is played. I'm sure I would not have wanted to hang out with friends.
Diego Rivera done at the Rockefeller Center in 1934 in Mexico City, but
because they were willing as patriots to pay their freedom to expose the fact that the FBI was out of control. And that turned into the Church and Pike committees in the mid-1970s. And for the first time, we investigated our own intelligence services and found out the United States government was illegally harassing and assassinating American citizens who were trying to behave politically in a way that was anathema to JFK. What we need to do is to look at the leader of that group. I believe his name was William Davidoff, a student of Ree Gelman and a professor of physics at Harvard. Those guys, disciplined, organized, they found the word COINTELPRO, they created FOIA requests, they forced, I believe the New York Times wouldn't run their findings, and they forced the Washington Post to have to investigate us. Right now we need a redo of the Church and Pike committees so that we know what our intelligence are up to. We need to inflict people who are actually progressive inside of center-left media, which is demonizing everybody. All of these people born in the 1940s are going away because of Father Time.
Those who believe themselves to be free disregard the fact that to be governed in the modern world is to be watched, inspected, spied upon, directed, law-driven, numbered, regulated, enrolled, indoctrinated, preached at, controlled, checked, estimated, valued, censored, and commanded by beings who have neither the right, nor the wisdom, nor the virtue to do so.
But when you actually looked at the ground, when you looked at the earth, well, it was New Mexico. That's where he jumped. The whole earth that you saw there was New Mexico.
Live and let live, as the age-old adage puts it, or as David Kelly explains. Individual rights leave individuals responsible for living their own lives and meeting their own needs, and they provide the freedom to carry out those responsibilities. Individuals are free to act on the basis of their own judgment, to pursue their own ends.
Let's ask ourselves, what world do we want to live in?
And to use and dispose of the material resources they have acquired by their efforts. Those rights reflect the assumption that individuals are ends in themselves, who may not be used against their will for social purposes.
Now, everything you heard is why I, the actual owner of the Alaska Cannabis Club, will be dedicating all of my energy toward fighting for freedom and fairness, which begins with legalizing marijuana here in Alaska. And as for this job, well, not that I have a choice, but Fuck it, I quit.
All right, we apologize for that. We'll be right back. Pardon for us. Meanwhile, the Vote Yes on 2 campaign held a fundraiser last night with Gary Johnson, the CEO of one of the largest cannabis businesses in the nation, who is also a former New Mexico governor.
George Bush went public after I published this book.
Dimmed memories is probably the most common. Thought suppression techniques such as dimming memories is something the shadow government do according to their agenda. The agenda is what is holy to these groups. They believe they are God.
What matters is what we know in our hearts. You can take the mark and not believe in what it stands for.
Understanding how power and inequality is sustained can perhaps give us opportunities for democracy and equality in today's world.
Revelation very clearly warns us about taking the mark of the beast.
That piece of history is largely unknown, but the ideology behind it is probably the most known idea in American society.
You have the serfs and you have the lords in the castle, and that's it. And there's not to be anything in between.
This is amazing. If that's true, and there's no purpose, there's no meaning to anything, then our owners can do whatever they want with us.
Despite this repression, major victories were still won. The captains of industry in America had just watched peasants and industrial workers in Russia rise to power. It had reverberations everywhere. The display of power was formidable. Like a prairie fire, the blaze of revolution was sweeping over every American institution of law and order a year ago.
This is amazing.
And you're just lying to the American people.